Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel where I'm talking about books again. Surprise, surprise. I am posting this a bit late because September was kind of cruel to me and I am now a little bit happier that it's October. I wanted to talk to you guys about what I read in September. I don't really want to go over everything that I read, but I'd rather share with you the books that I really liked. And perhaps I'll share one or two that I was kind of about. My first favorite book from September was City of Illusions by Ursula K. Le Guin. Yes, it's pronounced Le Guin. I looked it up. This book comes after the second book in the series called Planet of Exile. I did read that book in September as well. However, it was okay. It wasn't my favorite, but it did do well as a prequel to City of Illusions, which I really enjoyed. City of Illusions is about a man who is dumped in the middle of nowhere with no memory of his past. He is an alien to the planet, but he looks very similar to human. He just kind of has like cat eyes. The people in this forest take him in and take care of him and teach him their ways. Eventually, he comes to a point where he wants to figure out where he came from. So he goes on this solo journey where he encounters all kinds of people and tribes of this planet that he's on. Eventually he meets this woman that promises to take him to this city where he believes he can find out his origins. However, as you would think, a lot of things don't turn out how he expects, and he discovers some things about his situation and himself that he did not expect. This book is, I didn't really ever know where it was going. I didn't know what the twist would be. And when I found out, I was like, interesting. This book had a lot of action. I think it could be interpreted well as a movie, although I doubt that they'll make a movie of this series. It did come out in the 1960s, which is probably my favorite era for sci-fi. It was very ahead of its time. City of Illusions, I gave 4.5 stars out of 5. I really liked this book. The next book in the series is The Left Hand of Darkness, which I'm so excited to read because it's been so hyped up for me. I don't think I'm gonna read it in October. I might, but we'll see. The next book that I read that really knocked my socks off was The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. A lot of people were required to read this book in school. However, I never read this story in school. It's fairly short. I believe the actual book is like 100 pages. It's about this man who suddenly wakes up in the body of a giant insect or beetle. He was initially the breadwinner of the family, so the story kind of goes on about how the family deals with him and has to take care of him now that he's this insect that can't work or contribute to society. It also goes on about how everyone is so appalled by his appearance as this bug insect vermin he's become. It has a really sad ending. However, I think it speaks to a lot of issues that we don't really talk about as a society. What I got out of the story is how poorly we as a society treat people that aren't actively contributing, such as the elderly, people that are sick, people that are disabled, disfigured, and how we put these people in these states of alienation and isolation that makes them recede into themselves and become something else entirely. This story had a lot of existential properties, I would say. I gave The Metamorphosis 5 stars because I think it is a very essential read and poses a lot of important questions about us as humans. The next book I read that I really enjoyed was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Like a lot of people my age, I watched iCarly a lot as a kid, and of course Sam, Jeanette McCurdy's character on the show, was my favorite, like many people. This book really goes into Jeanette McCurdy's childhood and how she was pretty much abused as a kid. She deeply goes into her eating disorder issues and other struggles that came with growing up in the house that she lived in, and how she dealt with it after she got out of acting. This book was so heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. I really hope Jeanette McCurdy you know, finds happiness in whatever she does next. She very strongly does not want to do acting anymore, at least when she wrote the book. She does seem like a promising author though, and even though this was a memoir, I believe she has potential to write other really good stuff. So 5 stars. I really recommend reading this book. Probably the best memoir I've read in a long time. My next top tier favorite I read of the month was My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. My Best Friend's Exorcism is, I believe, a young adult novel. However, it takes place in the 80s. It has a lot of like 80s music nostalgia. It's about these 2 young women, teenagers, named Gretchen and Abby, who are best friends. They go on this trip out of town with their other friends, and Gretchen comes back kind of different. Over time, Abby starts noticing that Gretchen has become more strange and cruel in her behavior, which is really out of character for her. It becomes apparent that Abby is the only one that's noticing Gretchen becoming more and more horrible. Even her own parents don't really see what's happening or understand what's going on, so it ends up being up to Abby to ultimately save her friend's body and soul. Grady Hendrix has this phenomenal talent for writing female protagonists that have to meet all their fears and challenges head on despite everyone being against them, everyone turning against them, essentially. This has been a theme in the last few books that I've read by him: Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and more recently, The Final Girls Support Group. It's a great trope. I really like it. I believe this is probably Grady Hendrix's best work. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I know Amazon recently released a movie of it. It has very bad reviews. I don't think I'm going to watch it, maybe, but the book was so good, I don't really have faith in the integrity of the movie producers. Next, I want to talk about the graphic novels that I read that were my favorite this month. The first being Lore Olympus Volume 2 by Rachel Smythe. I read the first book last month, and it was okay. I think I gave it like 4 stars. However, Volume 2 is spectacular. Now that we've gotten to know all the characters, we're getting more of the plot. I just really liked all the characters. I love the, you know, Greek-Roman mythology tropes that have been really popular recently in romance, and it's so beautifully illustrated. I don't know what it is about Rachel Smythe. She's just really great at conveying mood. I think it's just the almost watercolor aspect of her illustrations and the coloring that really convey feelings while you're reading it. I am very excited for the 3rd volume to come out. I think it's supposed to come out this year. Maybe. Anyway, 5 stars. The longest and probably my favorite graphic novel that I read this month was Invincible Compendium One by Robert Kirkman. This book is huge. It's like, I got it from the library, so I don't have it, but it's enormous. It's probably the same size as the Saga compendium I read this year. I picked it up because, you know, a while ago there was a lot of memes about the show with it being so violent, and I'm like, I like violence. So I picked it up, and it at first seemed like just a simple superhero story. There's a lot of very slice of life moments, and then the violence unfolds. You find out more about the main character's father and his origins, which end up being a lie from the start, and it's just a great sci-fi superhero story. I loved it. 5 stars. So excited to read the next one. There's 3 compendiums out, so maybe I'll get around to reading the next one soon. Maybe I won't. Who knows? My last favorite of my graphic novels that I read was Sweet Tooth Wild Game, which is number 6 in the series, and the final graphic novel in the series. Wrapped up so perfectly, so crazy what happens in the end, although I kind of expected it. Also, the ending was happy, which doesn't really happen in a lot of these, you know, dystopian, post-apocalyptic stories, but it kind of worked. It was sad, but it worked, but it was happy. I don't know. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I really liked it. But yes, Sweet Tooth was a phenomenal graphic novel series, and I am sad that it's over. I think they did like a sequel follow-up to the series that I would like to read, maybe. So since you all sat through me talking about my favorites, I want to talk to you about my least favorite book that I consumed this month, and that was The Ravaged by Norman Reedus. Yes, you heard me, Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead. It's just about these characters that have had a lot of tough times in their life and basically what they're going through. And I didn't really care for most of the characters. And for some reason, when you're following these characters, you're constantly being introduced to other characters that know the characters. So I'm having to get to know all these different characters, and half those characters aren't even there. Like, they're just like passing through the story. Like, they're there and they're gone. Like, I didn't need this in-depth story about this character that isn't really gonna come back around again. Either way, this is the lowest rated book I've read in a while. I gave it 2 stars. It wasn't bad. I didn't really like it, and I feel like a lot of people agree with me reading the other reviews. I feel like all the higher reviews are just people that are like mega fans of him. I do like Norman Reedus, but this book was meh. I do think he has a lot of potential for writing a good book, but this was it wasn't. I think it was also because it was a book exploring 3 different separate characters that I didn't really get to know any of the characters as much as I would have liked to. I just kind of got to know them a little, and then the book was over. It was meh, and I'm sad to say it, but it is what it is. Anyway, that's all for my September favorites. As usual, leave a comment with any cool books that you've read recently or books you're excited for. Leave a like on this video and subscribe if you would like to see more of this. Thank you.